I mean, we're 3 weeks, I guess, from the end of the season, and you're already have a two-a-day going. I'm like, sheesh, no rest
Yeah,
for the
well,
wicked up there. Jeez.
yeah. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, a lot of these guys didn't. I mean, yeah, they are doing that though. I mean, they're lifting too, So it's not like it's just wrestling. But today was two wrestling practices. But it was, very minimal instruction. It was like warm up and then two matches each session.
Yeah.
So, but
Well, how'd they look?
fine. It's hard to tell because you got all sorts of people. Like some outmatch the other ones and stuff like that. So you know what I mean? Like it's hard to tell always, but it's just giving the guys a good feel when people are watching. And they used a whole mat, so it's like wasn't everyone wrestling at once. Each guy got their own mat, so that's nice.
As a coach, and you're seeing that your guys are being a little sluggish, obviously throughout the season it's going to happen, or even say today, hypothetically, like, what do you do when do you ever like throw out the practice plan and be like, we got to switch it up? Like the energy's just not right for the practice we're going to have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure you have to make adjustments like during the season if you've been traveling a lot or you know, it's a lot of times more on an individual basis. If you can tell a guy's like
Yeah.
shrinking in weight, and his weight's going down and we're trying to like keep weight on him or something like that, you know, they might rest a little bit more. Or they might do a different workout. They might not do as an intensive one or as long of a practice, that type of thing. But, even if you want the intensity in there, you just don't have to make it as long. And they still kind of hit that intensity level. But yeah, you definitely factor that in, right? I mean, some guys get sick. It's like, okay, well, we need to, like this year, for instance, we were dealt with a lot of sickness, like more than I've ever seen. And we
Really?
need our guys, yeah, we need our guys feeling good to compete, So it's resting those guys and just being smart. Otherwise, it's like they got to battle the tough practices and then they got to battle the tough competition. It's like whenever you see a guy kind of going through a tough time, like for instance, a guy out on the mat and he's getting tired and stuff.
Mhm.
I mean, in my opinion, it's not like he's a Division I athlete. It's not like he's out of shape. Like I'm not even like year round. You shouldn't be out of shape. Is my opinion.
Mhm.
But the factors that you see play a role in that are, they dehydrated too much making weight. They are overtrained or
Hmm.
maybe they're sick, or something like that. Like you should be able to wrestle 7 minutes at any moment, I think, pretty much. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
if it's not a shape factor, you know. Even beyond that, like just controlling tie-ups and stuff is probably more important than shape. There's guys I used to wrestle all the time that I bet if we ran like 3 miles, they'd crush me. But in like, a 10-minute period, I can get them exhausted because you know how to control ties and stuff like that, and pressure them so that they're always reacting to you and stuff like that.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. Yes. Yes. That if they're tired, it's not because they're out of shape, you know.
Well,
There's
let me
probably
rephrase that. Let me
yeah.
let me rephrase that a little bit. Everybody
Yeah.
gets tired.
Yeah, yeah. Yep, yep.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like if
Mhm.
you if you're not tired, you're not wrestling hard enough. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Yep,
it's like
yep.
the better shape you get in, the harder you can wrestle. So you're always going to be somewhat tired. But if you see
Right.
someone that they're not quite themselves or that type of thing, it's usually one of those factors of weight management or um, overtraining or sickness or something along those lines.
Yeah. I guess I'll rephrase what I was gonna say. Like obviously they're gonna be tired, but if they're like almost if their ability to wrestle hard through that tiredness or fatigue, that maybe is what you're kind of looking at, and that there may be a factor that's draining them other than just being tired.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, everyone gets tired and you
Yep.
have to almost shut your mind off where it's like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like there's I feel like I'm just reflecting on myself a little bit. So many times where I'd wrestle so hard and I was in the zone, and then as soon as the match is over, you're like, geez, I didn't realize I was this tired. You know, because your focus isn't on how you feel, it's you're looking for an opening. You
Hmm.
know, so if your focus is on the wrong thing, it can really weigh on you. But if your focus is on, just looking for the next opening to score or whatever, you're kind of like, you're in the zone, you're very present. When you're focused on how you feel, you're not present on what's going on out on the mat, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. That's funny. You'll say that you'll get off the mat and you're like, wow, I didn't realize I was this tired because I was focused on other things, and it's just,
Yeah.
um, was it difficult to stay at 125? Speaking of kind of like dehydration and weight cutting and weight management, I mean, you stayed there for a really long time, going back to even in high school, right? I mean, you were right around that weight.
Yeah. Honestly, I wasn't very big in college. Like
Hmm.
in the middle of summer, I don't think I would very rarely weigh over 135, like in the middle of the summer.
Really?
Um, Now when I got a little older, I started training a little differently, and like my last couple of years competing, I had to watch it pretty good because there's a 2 hour weigh-in, and I went from day before weigh-ins in the old freestyle, like I think in 2018 it changed to 2 hour weigh-in instead of day before, and then I had to watch it a lot more, I would say,
Hmm.
and yeah, I definitely felt it a few times, but it's again like you can't really worry about how you feel. Everyone weighs the same when you step on the scale, and but I had it dialed in pretty good. So I just had to be really diligent with it, and my goal wasn't to you know like feel as good as I could. I wanted to be the most effective. What was the most effective for me
Hmm.
type. That was my mentality.
Interesting.
How could I wrestle a really high pace, and so I had to have it under control if I wanted to wrestle that really high pace.
Yeah.
But again, like my last couple of years is the only time I really had to watch it.
Hmm. So how did you switch up the way that you cut weight or managed it as you got older? Because like your metabolism might have been starting to slow down or I don't know, there may have been just other things that cause you to like lose weight differently or, gain weight differently and stuff, when you're 18 versus, 22, 23.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, training wise, when we were in college, we would run a lot. It was hard
Hmm.
for me to put on weight. Just spent and we would live wrestle an insane amount, right? So it was hard to put on weight that way. And we still lifted a lot. I lifted more in college than I did probably. Well, there's periods depending upon the time of the year, right? Like,
Hmm.
if I was getting ready for a competition, I'd probably lift twice a week, and they'd be short little lifts at the end of my career because it's like that wasn't my focus. Like I had the strength there, like I wasn't as strong when I got out of college. And I developed that by not running as much and then, really seeing like I had this strength coach that was amazing. He did a lot for me. And we'd sit down and schedule out when I would compete and we'd go backwards and figure out how I was going to train for like, 2 to 3 block periods, leading up to what was next. And, his name is Cal Dietz, actually. He's kind of famous in the strength and conditioning world, but he did a lot for me. Um, and I kind of use a lot of those tools now, actually, when I'm still trying to be an athlete, right? I'm not competing,
Really?
but I want to be as athletic as I can on a day-to-day basis. So,
Hmm.
but I don't crush myself in the weight room like anymore like I used to, but I just do a little bit every day, more that type of mindset.
Yeah. Um, you said earlier that if someone were to race you or run 3 miles or whatever against you, they'd probably beat you. Are you sure? Because you were, you lettered, I thought, in cross country, right? So I mean,
Uh,
you,
it's
you
almost
know,
embarrassing that you brought that up.
like,
Uh,
what was your PR?
I couldn't even tell you. I did
Oh,
it like
really?
my junior and my sophomore and junior year, and I just did it for fun, right? Like
Yeah,
I was thinking I got to do something. They didn't have wrestling clubs like in the fall back then. I would just
yeah.
wrestle buddies that I knew, and then I would just do that. and I just kind of needed something. The practices were fun. I didn't mind getting tired. I wasn't scared to get tired and stuff.
Mhm.
I hated meets. I hated the
Really?
meets. Yeah, because I wasn't good. I mean, like I am at wrestling. There's guys, these skinny little guys who can run like the wind. One cross country meet, I actually sprinted out for the first 300 meters or so just to be in first place. And then everyone
Yeah.
passed me, but at least I
Yeah.
was in first place at one point. But I didn't take it too serious. I mean, I tried hard, but I didn't really take it too serious.
Yeah. No, hey, that's kind of fun though, or the fun of being like a high school athlete, obviously you're competitive and you tried your best, but it was also maybe more about just having fun, being around a different group of people, a different group of athletes, just
Hmm.
seeing different side of sports and friends too, that you maybe don't hang out with on a regular basis.
Yeah, for sure. That was the reason, probably.
Yeah. Um, so no idea how fast you were. Were you at least on varsity or were you just on
Yeah, well,
JV?
I mean, I'm from a tiny town, and actually, the year I went out, I mean, it was the first year they brought it back, and the
Really?
the teacher was asking me to go out for it because he knew I wasn't going to go out for football.
Hmm.
And I'm like, kind of felt bad. I'm like, all right, I'll go out for it. So I'll help you out. It was this first year, so I was on varsity, but it's not like it was, a tough group that I had to get past to get on varsity. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Don't sell yourself too short.
It's true. I
So,
was not good. I was not good. I was okay, like for the average Joe, but not like
Mhm.
when you're competing against actual runners instead of like your
Right.
grade. Like in elementary school, you win the mile, you think you're fast. You go to a
Yep.
cross country meet, good luck, bro.
Yeah. I ran cross country in high school, so like I totally understand that. Yeah, there's some people who's like, what the hell?
Right?
Good.
What was
Yeah.
what was one thing that was kind of cool? I remember running against this guy a couple times who was a badass. He was like ranked number one in the state and whatnot. And he he would win everything that I would be at, like because he was from Rochester. And his name was Mike Torchia. I think he won state pretty easy. I don't know. I can't remember, but it's funny because he went to the U of M to run cross country,
Really?
and I went to the U of M to
Okay.
wrestle. He was like a year or two older than me,
Hmm.
and I remember when I got there, I'm like, "Hey, I know you. You're Mike Torchia. You're the runner. I ran against you in high school a couple times. He went to know who I was, but he's like, "Hey, are you
Right.
Zach Sanders? You're the wrestler?" I'm like, "Yeah, I am." So we were kind of friends after that. Yeah, you know what I
Right.
mean? When I'd see him, I'd kind of wave to him or something. But we had respect for each other because we came from the same area of the state. He came from Rochester.
Hmm.
I came from Wabasha, which isn't too far apart. But we were kind of like, he was the runner in the area. I was the wrestler in the area, mutual
Hmm.
respect. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's athlete respect an athlete. Like obviously your craft is a little different than his craft, but he's still
Yeah.
doing well and doing what he can to perfect his craft just like you are. So yeah, I can understand there's like that mutual respect there. Like, hey,
Yeah.
because I'm sure there are people on the other side who are in cross country and they were like, man, I just beat Zach Sanders. Dude, that's Zach Sanders. You know?
I don't know about that. Maybe. I don't know. I didn't
I
hear any
mean,
whispers, but
because they were too afraid. They looked at you
yeah.
like, oh man, I don't want to say anything to him. You better not. He'll double leg you through the wall. So,
That's funny. That's funny.
what about baseball? That was the other thing I saw that you lettered in. Um, was that a passion of yours, or was that similar to cross country? Or
Yeah, for sure. I love baseball growing up. I thought I was gonna be in the pros. I thought I was gonna
yeah,
go to. I thought I was gonna play baseball, not wrestle.
really?
I was kid. I mean, when I
Oh,
was a little kid,
yeah.
Yeah, I played a lot of baseball growing up. Loved the sport. I actually the last couple summers have played in like a 35 and over league,
No kidding.
and
Okay.
it's tough though. I don't have that much free time, but like I got to play like 3 games each year, probably 3 or 4 games.
Okay.
Um, but it's just tough to fit it in. I feel bad when I leave and go play it a game, for like half a day or something. I got to drive there, but it is fun. It is fun.
Yeah. What was your batting average? You remember?
I don't know. It was actually one of the higher ones on our team, but I
Yes, there
also
we
had probably
go.
the fewest at bats. You know what I mean? Because I only went to like 4 games out of like 20.
Gotcha. Oh, so by that time you were probably so you were still playing baseball and summer wrestling, I assume?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I didn't go out actually. My last year I went out was geez, it's so long ago. Um, I think I think my junior year, maybe my sophomore year, I did not. Sophomore year, I played for sure. I can't remember if I played my junior year or not. But my senior year, um, we were like a tiny town, and senior
Yeah.
year we dropped down a class, and my grade ended up making it to the state tournament in baseball, and I was a little bummed that I
Yeah,
didn't play
dang.
that year, but I was just gone too much wrestling. I was like in the Dapper Dan, the USA Dream Team thing, like senior nationals, like all that stuff, and it was just more important to me, so I didn't play.
Yeah. How'd they do at state? Do you remember?
Geez, I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, at least
It's
they made it. That's pretty cool though for a small town, you know? I mean,
yeah.
to make it to state and anything is pretty
Mm-hmm.
freaking cool. So,
Yeah.
you grew up in, is it Wabash? Wabash?
Wabasha. Wabasha.
Wabasha. Wabasha.
Yep.
And that's like right on the border, right, of Wisconsin and Minnesota.
Yep.
So
Yep.
the major question, I'm a Vikings fan, so this is going to set the tone for the rest of our talk here. Are you a Packer fan or a Viking fan?
I'm a Vikings fan. I'm a proud Vikings fan.
Yes, we're gonna have fun. Okay, good
Yeah.
deal. Um, was it kind of split down the middle though? Like, were there a lot of Packer fans
Yeah,
too
for
in
sure. Yeah.
Wabasha?
Like I know, geez, it's almost like 50-50 darn near. Like where I grew up, I bet.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean, I grew up, Randy Moss was my hero, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
So
Same. I got this guy right here. I don't know if you can see
yeah.
that. There's a little Randy Moss
I
guy.
have a Randy Moss jersey that I wear every
Nice.
once in a while. Yep.
Nice. Cool. One of these days we'll get ours, but
Yep.
until then, everyone else will have their fun, but
Well,
we'll get
only
ours.
one team wins at the end.
Right.
So, 31 other teams go home with the same feeling that we have, but we always just think that it's just us. But when really it's every other team except
True.
for one,
True. True.
you know.
That's a good way to look at it. Um, what's the size of your town? You keep saying it's kind of a small town. What's the
Yeah,
population?
it's like 2,500, but the school is tiny, like
Yeah.
it's kind of an old retirement town.
Okay.
A lot of people from Rochester move there when they retire, or that like the school itself, I think I don't even remember what I graduated with. I think like 55 kids a grade maybe.
Wow.
But now it's like way down from that because the school is just shrinking. All these big farming families that used to live there,
Hmm.
they're not producing as many kids and whatnot. But so I'm kind of sucks that the town shrinking. It just makes sports super hard because there's just no numbers.
Yeah. So how did you come out of there with the, accolades and everything that you did? Like what's the or how did that kind of come about? You get what I'm trying to ask? Like with
Yeah.
the size of a town like that, and you're able to come out and be the
Yeah.
athlete that you were.
Yeah. Well, my dad was, the high school wrestling coach in our town. And
Yeah.
um, I don't even remember starting. I'd go to everything. I'd follow him. I'd go to all the varsity meets as like a little manager type kid. And,
Yeah.
I would, I wrestled a lot growing up. I'd go to tournaments every weekend and stuff. And I was always pretty solid. My dad he just invested so much time in us. That when we got a little older, we'd start going to the cities for practice in the spring. There's no one to wrestle. We were the only people who wrestled outside of the season in our town, so we'd have to go to the cities, and wrestle like the Thorne brothers and
Yeah.
Jason Ness and stuff like that. My dad would just try to find good partners, but that was a 2-hour drive each way,
Yeah. I was gonna ask how
and we
far
would
that
do that.
was.
Yeah, and in the spring and summer we do that 2 to 3 times a week, so yeah, it was a lot. We get home late and then have to wake up, go to school in the morning and stuff. But yeah, just my dad invested a lot of time into us. He was a teacher, so we had summers off too. So that helped, like bringing us to like different tournaments, like Northern Plains and stuff like that. Yeah, I was just super invested, and also he was obsessed with wrestling too. So it's like we're always watching technique tapes or watching whatever wrestling we could get our hands on back then because there's no YouTube or Flow Wrestling, But I felt like I could see people do stuff. I'm like, okay, I get it. I'm gonna attack it with that intensity, or then I'd work on a little skill, like just in our basement we had a little wrestling mat where we'd work on just little techniques here and there all the time. Or my dad was the varsity coach, so he didn't get to see me wrestle a lot of the times in the he wouldn't come with to the like little kids tournaments because he'd be at the varsity tournaments. And I remember we'd always bring a video camera with us, so when he got home from that, he'd watch our matches and then he'd like show us do this or do that, and then we kind of like just critique our own matches, and then we do the same thing the next weekend. So
Yeah. Did you ever talk about his college or his wrestling career? Because didn't he wrestle at Morris, University of Minnesota at Morris, right?
Yep. He wrestled at NAI school back then, Morris, University of Minnesota Morris. But there's a lot of good wrestlers that came out of there actually, like the Kozlowski brothers, people like that. But back then it was kind of like either Division I or it was NAIA. There was no like D2, D3, that type of thing. But he was pretty solid. I'm not sure, but I think they named like they don't have wrestling anymore.
Oh, really?
But
Okay.
I think at one time they had an award named after him, like the Sanders Scrapper Award or something.
Okay, there we go.
And he never told me that, but I'm pretty sure one of my PE teachers went to when I was like in elementary, went to Morris as well, and they told me. So then I asked him about it, and I don't know, he's probably embarrassed to bring it up or something, but.
Oh, that's cool. Did you talk to him or know much about his wrestling career? Did he talk about it? Sounds like maybe he didn't.
He'd bring up like little memories here and there just for like stories, like he was a big storyteller. He would, like maybe use something in a match, like like he would tell this story to the guys every once in a while, where it's like this match, where he wasn't supposed to win and like the whole town came up to watch and stuff. It was like their section tournament or something, because back then it was one class, and he wasn't supposed to win. This guy like beat him before and stuff, but he's like, gosh, all these guys are coming to watch me. I'm going to wrestle this match the very best I possibly can. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just going to do everything as good as I can and as hard as I can. And then he just like surprised himself and won. And it's kind of a cool story, but little stuff like that. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Did you wrestle a lot with your brother Eric? Because he wrestled at NDSU.
Yeah.
So was there a lot of scrapping going on there?
Not really.
Okay.
He was 4 years older than me and just bigger, and we never really wrestled. We never even really drilled with each other, but we'd do everything together. You know what I mean? If he went to lift weights, he'd bring me with him, or if we drove to the cities together, like my dad would take both of us, and everything he went through, I got to see first. So it's kind of an advantage, like what to expect at the next level and stuff like that. And yeah, he had a great career too. He was pretty tough. He was really strong, a lot stronger than I was. But yep.
Yeah. So when did you start to really take over the wrestling scene and become, just have a lot of success? Was it kind of right away?
Yeah, I would say so. My first couple of years, I just started winning everything. I didn't get to go to like Tulsa or any of that stuff, because my dad was in their season and I didn't really have anyone to take me, but like I knew I could like wrestle with that level of kids just because I would, like in Minnesota, I think I won like my first couple state tournaments I didn't win, but after that I won the next like 30 some state tournaments I entered, so like like freestyle, Greco, folk style, Min USA, and then there's an NYWA one too. So it's like we just go to everything. and I would always win all those. And but yeah, so
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 who was your main partner then, or partners, in Wabasha? Because you had to practice with somebody, right?
yeah, I had some pretty good partners, but they only wrestled during the season.
Okay.
Um, Guys that made it to state and stuff, but they're always a little bigger than me, so like it'd make it more competitive.
Hmm.
They're pretty tough. I was pretty lucky. There's a couple guys, a guy by the name of Tyler Cleese comes to mind, Scott Gussie, and then Zeb Seacrest. He was actually from Wisconsin, but he'd wrestle in our youth program with us, and he was tough as nails too. But so I had some pretty good partners, and then but outside of season, then I had to get on the road and go find them. And that's
Hmm.
kind of how I got really close with the Thorne family. Like as we got a little older, like I'd go up there for a week and just wrestle with them for a week, and then they'd come down to my house and we'd wrestle for a week, stuff like that. You
Oh,
know.
really?
Yep. So.
Nice. What'd you guys do? Because you're also still young boys. What did you do like when you go up and stay, or they came down and stay when you weren't wrestling? Like, were you outside and messing around, or video games? I don't know what, like free time.
Yeah, a little bit of everything. That's how
Yeah.
we, just I remember being outside like playing catch with whatever. I mean, back then, not to take anything away from the kids today, but like we were kind of creative,
For sure.
like
Yeah.
you would know. You'd get on a bike and there's times where my family didn't even see me. They didn't even know where I was. And I had to
Yeah.
call them from my buddy's house, like, hey, can you come get me? It's getting dark out there. I don't want to bike home. We lived miles out of town, so it's like, stuff like that. But we
Yeah.
do like all. Sorts of games, you know.
Yeah. Getting into trouble.
Try not to, but I'm sure there were times.
Inevitable.
Yeah,
Inevitable. Um,
right.
Gosh, so did you have trouble finding people? Like, I'm wondering how big the Thorne brothers were, because you were relatively still small throughout was your youth and everything. Was it difficult to find someone who was actually your weight to train with?
Um, I mean, they were pretty close to my size.
Okay.
They're a little older and a little bigger, but whatever, it's good enough. It's not like,
Yeah.
yeah, you got to compete against them I mean, you are competing against them all the time. Like we would wrestle actually a lot in little kids tournaments,
Oh, really?
up like 4 or 5 times we had to battle each other.
Yeah. How'd that go?
Ah, man, you're bringing up a sore subject.
Okay, never mind. That
I
answered my question.
The first like 3 or 4 times I wrestled Mike Thorne, he beat me every time. But it was always a war where,
Mhm.
we'd wrestle freestyle or something. I remember one match I got like 6 1-point takedowns, but he got like 2 rolls or 3 rolls.
Yeah.
And I was like the more classic, just get to the guy's legs. And he
Yep.
was like just kind of a all over the place type guy. But we had some really good matches. And then once I got into like middle school, like seventh, eighth grade, I won the next few. I don't know, remember how many, but it sucks is he's got the last one on me though. That's what sucks.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
got screwed over at the Apple Valley tournament, freestyle tournament when I was in the eighth grade, and Luke Becker was the referee. And he had a single leg and he dumped me to my butt and they gave him 3. Luke Becker gave him 3. I'll never forget that. That it was Becker at University of Minnesota
Wow.
guy. I'm like, I can't believe he did that to me. He screwed me over. I want to find the video of it so I can show
Yeah.
Becker what a bad referee he is.
When did you
But
find out that it was Luke Becker who was the ref?
I just remember.
Did you know that it was him when he was refing?
Oh yeah.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That son of a gun.
Yeah.
Did it ever enter into your mind to transfer, to go to a different school, to go to like Apple Valley or another school in Minnesota that would have, maybe been better suited, for what you were looking for wrestling wise?
I mean you have all kinds of thoughts, right? But
Right.
I mean I knew I wasn't ever going to, but it's fun to talk about, right?
Yeah.
My dad's the high school coach at our town. Like I'm not gonna leave.
Yeah.
Now I remember the Apple Valley coach calling my dad and offering him a job at Apple Valley as a teacher,
hmm
but we couldn't do that.
Yeah.
No.
No, hey, you're right. I mean, with what you needed to be as successful as you could, like it only makes sense that that would creep into your mind or that someone would reach out, hey, come on over, here's what we can offer you type of situation, you know. The way it is, I guess. Fortunately or
Yeah.
unfortunately, I don't know.
It was pretty informal. It wasn't like but it was just kind of funny to bring up now.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Just like I said, if you see somebody who, I mean, it's no different than it is now. If you have somebody who's in the portal and you're like, hey, what are you thinking? I mean, it's only natural just to reach out if you think that they might be a good fit, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, um, so were you always then thinking that you were going to wrestle probably at the next level?
Yeah, I would say um it's funny. I remember my dad took me to well, when I was in 6th grade was 2001, and that was the year Minnesota had 10 All-Americans and they won the national tournament.
Yeah.
And I remember like begging my dad to let me go to the NCAA tournament with him because he'd go every year and stuff. And
Mhm.
he was thinking about it. And then I think at the last second, he's like, "No, you're too young."
Wow.
And then Minnesota ended up winning, and he felt really bad, I think. So the next year, he let me go when I was a 7th grader, but it was in New York. So that was the first time I got on the airplane too. So we flew to New York for the 2002 NCAA tournament, and that was pretty cool. We went to that. Minnesota ended up winning. Jared Lawrence and Luke Becker won. I remember that was Cale Sanderson's fourth. Um,
Wow. What a
that
one
was
to go
like when
to.
Rob Rowan pinned the guy.
Yes.
All that same year, and I just remember thinking like we'd go to the Gopher matches and stuff, but nothing's like the NCAA tournament. And I
Right.
remember thinking to myself like, man, I will do whatever it takes to be here someday. Like nothing's gonna stop me. This is what I want to do. So from then on, like I knew this is what I want to do. So everything, like every decision pretty much I made was like, is this gonna get me to the next level?
Yeah.
So
Wow. You know what? Was that just the way you were wired to think that at that young of an age to just be like, this is it, and like just chase that like a dog on a bone, or you know what I mean, till you got it. I mean,
yeah. I I don't know. I remember having those feelings, but it wasn't like that was my only motivation. I really liked wrestling too. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
it love developing new skills. I love working on new techniques and figuring them out, playing with them and then I loved competing, so it wasn't just like one thing. I loved competing. I loved practice too, you know what I mean? I liked um developing and figuring things out in a physical manner. That was so it wasn't just one thing, I would say. It was, a combination of all that stuff. But then just the atmosphere of the NCAA tournament, it's like you go home and you just dream about that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and so it's like, oh, I'm gonna do some pull-ups now, or I'm gonna do something else now, like, something like that. But
yeah. Um, did you? So you ended up winning, being a five-time state champ. Um, as a seventh grader, did you compete as well?
I did not. No,
Okay.
I would. Um, I was like the minimum for 103 back then was 88 pounds, and I weighed like 80.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so there was no way I was gonna be able to, but like my pride wanted to try out, so I had to
Mm-hmm.
drink. But the rule was you had to drink, or you had to be within 5 pounds of the weight to try out. So that meant instead of being 108, I had to be at 83.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember like after school just chugging these Powerades to make the weight, make the weight so I could try out for 103, but I had to get to 83. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, dude, there's no way I can barely get to 83. Like, there's no way I'm gonna get to 88. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But I still did it, and then I tried out, and I lost the tryout to my buddy anyway. But he was probably like a full size 103 pounder, you know. So
Yeah.
I was pretty scrappy. I won the ninth grade and understate tournament at like 95 pounds though that year.
Okay. Oh,
So
that same year?
that same year,
Okay.
weighing about, you know, low 80s.
Yeah.
So
Dang. Did you ever wonder, I guess, like thinking about this, that you were going to fill out to be big enough to be a 125 pounder in college?
yeah, I had a lot of like I wouldn't say like nightmares, but like thoughts were like, geez, I'm never gonna be big enough, you know, because when I was a kid, I'd grow like 5 pounds a year.
Yeah.
And I remember the day my dad told me, he's like, hey, they got rid of 118. It's 125. They bumped it up. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm never gonna be big enough. You
Yeah.
know? Not to mention my dad's always telling me I was never gonna be big enough. You know what I mean? Like that type of
Mhm.
thing. Like, I don't know if you'll be big enough. So that was kind of a scare growing up for me, honestly. Um, and you know, like my first year in college, like I got to college, I would be like underweight every practice in the fall when
Yeah.
I got to college, I probably weighed like 130 or a little less, you know, so which is fine, whatever. You know, everyone
Yeah.
weighs the same when you weigh in, but you know, I wrestled guys bigger than me my whole life. Now I'm just wrestling good guys bigger than me.
Yeah. How much did you weigh then your eighth grade year, when you won your
Like
first state title?
90. I think like I got really lucky. I tell people that year I started the year off, I think the first tournament I weighed like 93 pounds. And I just kind of like started to mature at the perfect time. By like the end of the year, I weighed like 98 pounds, but it wasn't like a soft 93 pounds. It was like a solid 98 pounds. Like I changed, my body changed a little bit.
Hmm.
And just, I always tell people, I imagine maturing feels like that's what steroids feels like. You know, and you're just growing fast and you're getting strong in the weight room. And you're like, oh my gosh, like no one can beat me now, you know?
Yeah. Um, now, real quick, fast forward to college when you're weighing like 130 and you're consistently practicing and you're underweight. I know everyone steps on the scale and weighs the same, but there's still can be like a different feel to the guys that are like, you can just feel they're big. Um,
Yeah.
how did you handle that, especially with just the gauntlet that 125 was, like
Yeah.
night in and night out, there was just hammers.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I grew a little bit that freshman year too. So, you know, I put on a solid, you know, again, probably changed my body again. You know, when I was kind of a
Mhm.
soft 130, I probably was a solid 133. I don't know. I can't remember, it was so long ago, but
Yeah.
you know, you just gotta weather the storm on some of those bigger guys. And, you know, 125 pounders are notorious for cutting weight. So you just got to
Right.
use it against them and just, you know, soften them up and get them tired, you know, and that was a big thing for me. That had a huge influence on my style as being under like, you know, like the Gopher program was kind of known for being like brawlers and hand fighters and stuff like that. And I just absorbed it as much as I could because I didn't really wrestle like that in high school. I was kind of more slick and, you know, I still wrestled as hard as anybody. I didn't really learn how to use my hands that well until I got to college because I didn't need to, you
Hmm.
know.
Yeah.
And then when I got to college, I developed a lot of those skills.
Gotcha. Was there somebody or a couple of guys who posed just this unique challenge because of their size at the 125-pound weight class?
Yeah, I mean, I had a bunch of losses my freshman year in the lineup, but I mean, just like one thing that always gave me confidence is I knew like I would practice with Jason Ness,
Hmm.
who was a monster 125 pounder the year before. He was a national finalist. And I just knew if I was like doing good against him or doing okay against him, I should say,
Hmm.
that I wasn't going to be competing against Jason Ness. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
so, you know, just you just kind of develop like that attitude. Like, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to wrestle as hard as I can. And, you know, the coaches do a good job of like putting that in our heads constantly. Like, doesn't matter if you give up a takedown, it doesn't matter anything. You just got to wrestle 7 minutes as hard as you can and good things happen. You know what I mean? But
Hmm.
that spirit. And I just kind of carried that with me even when I got bigger. I'm like, I'm gonna wrestle my match, my pace, that type of thing. But you know, it didn't happen overnight, is what I'm saying. I guess it's like, you know, it took a lot of butt kickings to get there.
Hmm. how'd you stay positive throughout all that? Because like if you go from, excuse me, Wabasha, where you're the guy, you know, to a college room where like you kind of go back down on the totem pole, like it's almost like
Yeah,
a huge drop where you're like the guy and now you're not at all.
yeah, yeah,
How'd
for
you
sure
handle
back
that?
then too, right? I mean, kids, some of the best kids get so polished now because they have so many opportunities.
Hmm.
But back then I wrestled an insane amount, and I got in the room. It was tough, but I just knew everyone else figured it out. Why can't I figure it out? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like I knew it
Hmm.
was just a time. I could just keep getting better. You'll be okay. And I knew that I liked wrestling more than probably everyone else that I was wrestling against. So it's like, oh, well, why can't I get better then? It's
Hmm.
just a matter of time. Um, but having that type of attitude, and honestly, like when I was in high school too, sometimes it was just too easy. It wasn't that fun. So you get
Really?
thrown in this room of wolves, at the U of M, and I mean you have to like frame it in your mind, like, dude, I waited years for this.
Hmm.
you know I want this challenge. Like this is the best. I have a
Hmm.
tough partner every day. What more could I ask for? you know so keep
Yeah.
things into perspective that way.
Yeah, and that can be hard, because even people who think like that or who say that that's what they think, they could still come out of a practice and just be just so beat down that they're looking at it the exact opposite way of like, what am I doing here? Do I belong? You know, I mean,
Yeah,
how do you handle guys? Because as much as you want them to think like you think, there's just
yeah,
not.
yeah. I mean, I would go to those open tournaments and I would do well.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I would do a lot better in those open tournaments than I would do in um the practice room, just because guys I was wrestling. But um yeah, it is tough. There was definitely days I had tears in my eyes, stuff like that. But I don't know. The next day, you just get back up and do it again.
Yeah. The first time, I'll tell you this story here. The first time I remember Zach Sanders or hearing about Zach Sanders. So I'm from Iowa. I'm from a small town in Iowa, and we every year we had this border battle, this Iowa Minnesota border battle. And it would have been your senior year. You ended up wrestling a teammate of mine.
Oh yeah,
Named,
head ready.
yep, Kyle Pedretti. Yep. And being from the small town, and again, like you're saying, no YouTube, no none of this where you can know a lot about people. We're like, all right, cool. Pedretti's going to go there. He's going to win. Like, that's just what he does. He was a two-time
Yeah,
state champ, and he comes back and he got beat. And I'm like, what? Who beat Kyle Pedretti? And not only that, he got majored. And I'm like, who the heck did this? So that was my introduction to Zach Sanders was like, you majored Kyle Pedretti. And I'm like, oh boy.
yeah.
That's when there's levels to this.
That border battle all star meet or whatever. That was in Iowa, I think, like a
Yes, it
northern
was.
Iowa school, not
Yep.
not UNI, but a high school. And I actually bumped up a weight for that to wrestle him.
Oh, really?
I was a 119 pounder that year, and I wrestled him, and I remember like the whole gym going crazy because he snagged a takedown. I think I got two takedowns, and then I like let him up, and then I don't remember what happened. It was so long ago. I don't remember like the actually what
Right.
happened in the match. I just remember the
Yeah.
score, and I remember him getting a takedown on me. So the first period ended like 4-4,
Hmm.
and the whole crowd was going crazy or something. I'm like, oh, that's it. Time to turn it up a notch.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's funny. I actually found an article from that. Um, and I don't know if this is true or not, but the article said it was the first time you had given up offensive points in like 2 years.
I think I did give up. I don't know. I it's so long ago. I don't
Right.
remember, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure I gave up points along the way somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe I
Um,
don't know,
so that
but
that makes me think, since you were wrestling 119, did you ever think about wrestling 125 to show colleges that you could wrestle 125 at the next level and handle yourself? You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, I did a lot like in duels and stuff. Like there's times I wrestled 130. Like stuff
Oh,
depending upon like for the team type thing. But
yeah.
I don't know. I think at that time you had to wrestle. whatever weight you wrestled at the state tournament, you got to wrestle that at the senior nationals.
Okay.
And I knew I was going to go to that. So that was probably a big part of it. But I mean, Minnesota is like a smaller community wrestling community, I should say, is a small community, but I like all the state champions at all the weights like above me from, different classes and stuff. It's like I would wrestle them in the summertime and stuff. So I knew where I was at with
Wow.
them,
Yeah. Was it pretty easy to say that you were going to go to Minnesota? Was it a foregone conclusion, or was it more of a difficult decision than you thought it was going to be?
Well, like I said, when I went to like the national tournament, like when I was a seventh grader, it's like I was sitting in the Minnesota section. I was a Minnesota. I was a diehard, because Minnesota was hitting its stride at that time. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Minnesota
for
wrestling.
sure.
So I wanted to. I kind of dreamt of wrestling for them, but you never know. You know what I mean? You
Right.
never know
Mhm.
until you might be the best guy in the nation, but if they don't need your weight class, if they already got their guy in there, then it's tough. But Jason Ness went to the U of M, and then the next year, well, Jason Ness went there, right? And then the next year, Mike Thorne went, and those are two of my good buddies at the time. And then I actually verbal to Minnesota when I was a junior at the end of my junior year, which nobody did that back then. Like you couldn't start recruiting guys until July 1st before their senior year back then.
Right. Yeah.
So I was like, by the time like people could reach out to me and stuff, they'd call the house. I'm like, is it true you already verbal to Minnesota? I'd be like, yeah, that's true. It's like, okay, well, if you want to come on a visit, we're still open, but
Mhm.
I didn't visit. I didn't entertain anything else. Like I was excited to be a part of the Gopher program for sure. Like all the memories, we're talking about watching Randy Moss when we were
Yeah.
kids. That was the same way what I was with the wrestling. I'd go to all the home matches for the Gophers, and I remember watching like Brock Lesnar wrestle, or like Tim
Yes.
Hardtongue,
Yeah.
Brandon Eggum, like Luke Becker, Jared Lawrence, Leroy Vega. I could go on and on, like all those guys, So, and then in the summer, I'd be at like random camps and they'd be there. So I already, it's kind of cool in wrestling is that, pro sports, you never get to see Randy Moss at a kids camp. You know what I
Right.
mean? But wrestling is a small community. You go to the camp, there they are. You can
Hmm.
pick their brain. You can watch them wrestle, So you just kind of get attached to them, and that was kind of, I guess, what the dream was for me was I want to wrestle there if I can, but if not, it doesn't matter. I'm still going to win the whole thing.
Yeah. Have you felt that about yourself now that the roles are kind of reversed? That maybe you go to the camp and they're like, "Oh my God, there's Zach Sanders."
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, it is a real thing. I like coaching all levels, not just the college guys, but I try to do some camps here and there, make a little side money, and then also it's like refreshing to me. It's like it keeps me, like there's an Albert Einstein quote out there. It's like if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't know it well enough. And I feel like it really helps my
Mm,
coaching at the college level, balancing it out with like kids and stuff too. You know what I mean? You can explain things, concepts, you know, it's not just moves and stuff, right? There's concepts out there that, how to apply pressure or how to chain wrestle, all that stuff. But
mhm.
yeah, I do enjoy teaching youth.
Yeah. Was there a phone call that you received that maybe gave you a little bit of pause before you committed or, went
I
full
don't
blown
even remember
Minnesota?
who called me.
Oh.
I'm trying to think. I remember Ohio State calling me. I'm sure there was a bunch, but back then I didn't have a cell phone either. So,
Yeah.
it's like call the house phone. I'm like, if I don't answer, you're not getting a hold of me.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know like if nowadays it's like, gosh, if Kale Sanderson calls, like you have to at least entertain it a little bit. So like I didn't
Well,
know
now
if
they
like
can just like leave a text message. Hey, this is Coach Sanderson. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Or something like that. Like back then, I mean, there was times I was outside. Like we had a big yard. I could be shooting bow or whatever. I'd hear the phone ring, and it's like, dude, no way you're gonna make it to the house before the phone stops ringing. You know what
Hmm.
I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so I don't know, but I mean, there was
And
times when the Gophers would call me, and I'd get home. it'd be kind of late, and I was with friends or something, and my mom would tell me Jay Robinson called, and I'm just like, dude, what does he want? Like, I'm already verbaled. Why is he calling me right now? I don't want to talk to him right now. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, and even then, back then, I don't remember the first time we had an answering machine. Like it would just ring and the line
Yeah.
would just go dead. Like you wouldn't even have an opportunity to leave a voicemail and say, "Hey, this is so and so, call me back."
Yeah.
So simpler times, man.
Yeah.
Um, the one thing I wanted to ask, or a little couple things about your Minnesota career is, your freshman year, you were 39-10. So I talked to Mac Ryder about this. He wrestled a bunch. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
49 matches, like,
Yeah. That's what we did, like that's what everyone did. The first
yeah.
like 3 weekends of the season were always like open tournaments. So you get 4, and then you go to the you go to the Bison Open, you get 3 or 4. It was a bigger tournament back then. You go to the Kaufman Brand Open, which was a big tournament. There's a huge brackets, and then you go the next weekend to something else. I don't know, you get 15 matches in the first 3 weekends almost,
Yeah.
and then you start doing more tournaments and duels and stuff like that. But yeah, then we went to Vegas too, the Cliff Keen, and that was a
Mhm.
big one, I don't know how many matches that was.
Yeah, I just saw that and I was like, wow, that's just different times, I guess. I mean, but how were you
Yeah.
able to stay fresh throughout the whole year, you know?
Well, part of it was I didn't have to manage my weights as much.
Okay. Yep.
I think I was young and excited, you know. I just was drooling to get out there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's just what everyone did too. Like even like training now is just completely different, right? Like, you still want to bring that intensity no matter what. But like when I was a freshman, I remember every Monday we did like a 50-minute period. You know,
Gosh.
a 50-minute period every Monday. This is in the fall before the season started, just kind of get good volume of training in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we would run and lift 4 days a week. We would wrestle like 4 days a week. And then sometimes like on Wednesday we'd play like football, like as a team,
Yeah.
and it was a lot of volume, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
glad I went through that. But now like we don't do that, you know, we're much more careful not to injure our guys, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling Michael Kemmerer the other day, he's our new coach at the University of Minnesota, and
Mm-hmm.
he was asking what it was like. I said, well, when I was a redshirt, J-Rob had this system he would put people through where you would lift 5 days a week if you weren't competing,
Oh my gosh.
So you would, I mean, these were the toughest lifts you've ever done. There were circuits, right? Like, so Monday,
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday, Friday, you do different circuits. And then on Tuesday and Thursday, you do 5 sets of 15 squats and 5 sets of 10 cleans, which, like think about doing 10 cleans. Like I just remember my wrist hurting, from catching that thing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But 5 sets of 15 squats, it would be like, if you got it, you have to add more weight. I remember like Luke Becker scooting on like a 2.5 on the edge, on the end of it. Cause I got to 15. I'm just like, oh my God, I'm not gonna like just him putting on a 2.5. I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. I don't know if I can do it. And then you do it and he takes that off, puts on a 5, on the bar. Just like this brutal, like this was for the people that weren't competing. This was like after
Mm-hmm.
Christmas. And they were it was like Navy SEAL training is what I envisioned it. Like it was like, I mean, we don't do any of that stuff anymore, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
honestly glad I went through it, just to like know that I can overcome stuff like that. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Uh, that is just so it almost made you want to compete,
yeah,
so
yeah,
you didn't have to
that
go through something like that.
100%. 100%. I remember Mike Thorne and I were talking one time. It's like, dude, we have to be the guys next year because we can't do this again. Because Mac Ryder got hurt the year before, so Mike stepped in as a true freshman. Well, Mac was coming back from ACL surgery,
Mm-hmm.
and so he actually, my best buddy, got a red shirt with us. You know what I mean? So
Mm-hmm.
we got to go through the red shirt together. We would push each other, but we did some crazy workouts like that. And it's just like, dude, we gotta be the starters. We gotta be the starters. And when I committed to, it's like, there's no guarantees. Like you don't go to a school. I mean, you kind of go to a school based on, do you see yourself in the lineup a little bit, right? But like, there's no
Mhm.
transfer portal or anything. Like, I didn't know if Jason Ness was going to go up to 133 or not. I
Mhm.
just had to roll the dice and go. That's where I wanted to be, and I worked my butt off, and I think they saw like, oh, Jason's cutting a lot of weight. I don't know. We're gonna like, there's an opening here for Mac graduated,
Mhm.
and then they moved Jason up, and then I got to go at 25. But I mean, they sold that as the plan, but I don't think you ever know until it happens.
Right. Yeah, for sure. 100%. I mean, sometimes, but as I've kind of been talking, with a few people lately, like you kind of create your own luck, at times. And if you are Jason Ness and you see that somebody like Zach Sanders is in here working his butt off and you can go up and you can insert somebody like Zach Sanders here and you're not going to skip a beat, it just makes that decision so much easier, for somebody like him to move up and shift the lineup a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for sure, right? But in hindsight, you
Yeah.
don't know how I'm going to develop. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's kind of a
Yeah,
risk. It's a little bit of a risk.
for sure.
You know,
Yeah.
I was
Um,
pretty unproven. I mean, yeah, high school and college were just different back then too. Like I was pretty unproven at the collegiate level, I guess. And I mean, I did well at all the opens, but I'm not wrestling other D1 All Americans either. You know.
did that give you a little pause about your ability or how you were going to do at the next level? That, yeah, we didn't have the Super 32s and tournaments like that. I can't think of any others, but Beast of the
I
East or
mean, I
something
had
like
the
that.
same circumstances as everyone else, though.
True.
You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So it's like I'm playing the same game as they are. Like they don't get to wrestle in all the preseason tournaments, and I don't. It's like we all did the same thing.
Yeah.
So, but I had faith in myself that I could figure it out, and I don't know.
We figured it out pretty quickly, getting sixth right away, like as a redshirt freshman. I mean, 39 wins, 49 matches overall, ending up at sixth. I mean, was that still, though, a disappointment, ending sixth with as
I
competitive as
I
you are?
I don't think. I mean, yeah, there's matches I lost. I remember I lost to Robles in the national tournament, in the consolation semis. I beat him earlier in the year, so I was disappointed about that. But I was, it's like I still had 3 years. I'm like, I'll figure this out. I'll take it home. But
Mhm.
um, I was very happy just becoming an All American. I would say, but
Gotcha.
that
So
year,
yeah, so that's probably the difference then between like your freshman year and like as other years were expectations. That year you were
yeah,
just happy to All American, and then that sort
yeah,
of lifted your expectations.
for sure, yeah, for sure. Like the goal was to get on the podium, and then after that, okay, I got to win this thing. And I was wrestling all right, but I kind of had a rough sophomore year. I shouldn't say rough. I had a good year. I just I lost the first round at the national tournament.
Yeah, right.
I had to wrestle all the way back, and then I was like, all right, and again, I was almost like just happy to place because I lost first round. I had to win the next like 5 matches or so.
Hmm.
I was like, okay, next year's my year. So I would say my junior and senior years were very tough losses in the quarterfinals. Like I still haven't forgiven myself, but
Yeah. Yeah, I was gonna ask about the sophomore year and losing first round and ripping off five in a row because it's not easy. I mean, it's got to be the toughest thing to do. One of, I mean, because right away your dreams are crushed, and the backside is always like my dad always would want to stay on the front side as long as possible, you
hmm
know,
yeah,
because the backside is just full of it's just
yeah.
a gauntlet, hammers.
Yeah, I mean, you never know who you're gonna run into either. Some other person
Exactly.
that got upset that shouldn't have. But it's, I guess, like I did a really good job of just whoever's in front of me, I'm going to wrestle as hard as I can. Like I didn't look at the bracket. I remember not looking at the bracket, just asking the coaches who I got next. You know what I mean? Like that type
Mhm.
of thing. And, um, but I mean, just do the best you can, right? That's all you can do. Um, but again, it felt really good just to play. It's just because I'm like, geez, I put myself in a hole here,
Mhm.
you know, and the team needed it, like that was the year Jason Ness won. Um, I think we had hopes of bringing home that team, not probably first place. I don't know if we could have got there, but like a team trophy, top four. We also had Dustin Schlater.
Yeah.
Um, we had so Mike Thorne placed too, and then we had Dustin Schlater. That was his senior year, and he was the number one guy. The Harvard guy. I think J.P. O'Connor won it that year, but like Dustin was the guy. And then right before the Big Ten tournament, Dustin blew out his knee like bad.
Dang. Okay, I
Yeah.
remember that.
So and Dustin was a world team member the year before that summer. He was the guy representative for the USA at the World Championships, and he went down to 57 and he was the guy. I mean, he was like untouchable almost.
Mhm.
And yeah, just kind of bad luck and blew out his knee and he couldn't wrestle. And I mean, that would have been if we would have had another champ, we would have got a team trophy. You know,
Yeah. Losing
so
in the quarters is probably like, God, if you're gonna lose, that's probably the worst time to lose, because that drops you to the blood round, you know. Um, your junior and senior year that occurred. Was it nice to have that break, to have that reset that you lost your chance at a national title, but at least you have a little time to recuperate and get your mind right
for
before you head
sure,
back?
like, oh, 100%. I wouldn't have been able to wrestle. My senior year, especially, I don't think I would have been able. Both years, I probably wouldn't have been able to wrestle if it would have been,
Mm.
an hour later. I had to do some serious, like, just, not think about things. Like, I had to do my best not to think about um what I lost. You know what I mean? I just had to worry about the person in front of me and how I was going to score the next point.
Hmm.
That is it. That was my focus. It was, dude, I think after the tournament it's almost like I felt it even worse, because
Really,
yeah, yeah.
I
I
remember.
remember I'd always do like extra workouts on my own, and I always say NCAA champion, I'm gonna be an NCAA champion, and like I do the workout even harder because I tell myself that. And I
Yeah.
remember my senior year coming home, we got back in the flight, and I did a little workout, and I was like NCAA champion. I'm like, oh shit, I can't say that. You
Mm.
know what I mean? It's over. I didn't get it. So it's like stuff like that, like just it's tough.
Yeah. One thing though that I do remember is when your senior year when you finished third. That's always one of my favorite rounds is that round. The round where the placing matches, when people end up getting third or fifth or seventh, just like and even the guys who placed that didn't win their placing match, just the gratitude that they have. And there was something about yours specifically after you won and got third. Like, yeah, you fell short, but just the appreciation it seemed like people had for you as an athlete, and what you meant to the sport and to Minnesota. I don't know. I can't really explain it, but it just stuck with me. I just remember that vividly, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think in a way I was kind of a fan favorite just because I wrestled as hard as I could, and
Yeah.
I wrestled with a lot of heart. I think I'd always tell myself, kind of going back to my dad coaching me as a kid, like whenever I had a big match, I go out there. I remember my dad telling me, wrestle with some heart out there,
Hmm.
you know. So I always tell myself stuff like that before I go out there. So um yeah, I think that was probably one of the key things, right? And just exciting matches and being aggressive. People like to see aggressive wrestling. So
Yeah, and it always seemed like you did it the right way too. Like on top of that, you wrestled with heart, but the way you went about your business was sort of like the epitome of what if you were like, hey, I want my son to wrestle like a Minnesota Gopher, okay, which one? Zach Sanders is the one that they think of, like that's who I want to wrestle like.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but
Yeah, like you and I remember Jason Ness, Mac, of course. Like those were the guys that sort of carried the torch. You guys kind of passed the torch to one another. Mac had it, Jason, then you. Like you were like the face of Gopher Wrestling because that's what people wanted Gopher Wrestling to look like.
yeah, I mean for sure we like I think the teams I was on, you know, we had like a standard like, hey, we're gonna be freaking wrestlers, we're not gonna just
Yeah.
sit and wait and try and win at the end or something. It's like we're gonna go
Mm.
get it, and it cost me matches. It definitely costed me matches at times, but it also won me more matches than it cost me just being overly aggressive and leaving it out there on the mat and trying to score as many points as you can. Back when we only had a 2 point takedown,
Right? Yep.
you had to get a lot of takedowns to get a tech fall back then.
Hmm.
But it was yeah, it was just I think all of us took a little pride in just beating your opponent as bad as you can.
Hmm. Do you joke about that with the guys now? Like, you got so much easy. You got a 3-point takedown and a 4-point near fall. You guys got it so easy. You guys wouldn't survive back in my
Yeah.
day.
Not really. I mean, it
Yeah.
is kind of funny, but I mean, I kind of, yeah, I was worried about that when the 3 point takedown. I'm like, God, that's stupid. Why are we having a 3 point takedown? But now I'm like, I kind of like it.
Hmm.
It's just, if you're going to get a tech fall, I mean, it's so hard to win by 15 points if a takedown's
Yeah.
worth two and
Yeah.
a near fall is three. It's, it's, it almost like it's like freestyle, right? Like when you get a tech fall, it's like the matches are shorter and you score in bundles, stuff like that. But okay, he's ahead by 10. Okay, we can call it. You know what I mean? Like it shortens like the butt kickings, I should say. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like get him off the
Mhm.
mat. Who's next? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and it's if you lose by 15, you don't want to be out there getting taken down 12 times.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think what also made your team fun to watch was you had somebody like you who did it one way, and then Dylan Ness, who was like, I'm not saying he was the complete opposite, but he wrestled and dominated in a different way. And so that's what made it fun. You had two different guys who dominated in two completely different ways. And that was just, Dylan was just so fun to watch in general, but that didn't make you less fun to watch. It just was
Yeah.
two different styles.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Jason and Dylan were complete opposite styles. And they were like the same body. It's like this tall, skinny guy who just shoots single legs and half Nelsons people over for Jason. And then Dylan would just reach back and do his little um, gator bacon thing from all
Yeah.
positions. Just like so funny.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's a beautiful thing about the sport of wrestling, right? Like anybody can win, different body styles. You just got to figure out how you're going to score points and figure out how you're going to stop people from scoring points, right? But people do it differently. There's more than one way to win, and that's one of the things I really like about wrestling is kind of the art of it.
Yeah. And like you said, how it doesn't matter. Like, two completely different styles, completely different body types. Just find out what works best for you, and you'll be able to get it done. It doesn't matter if
Yeah.
you're short, tall, long, short, lean, whatever. You can still get it
Mm-hmm.
done.
Yep. Yep. You just got to figure out a game plan, right?
Yeah. A couple things before I let you go. I wanted to ask, this past year you had a guy by the name of Max McAnally. Um,
Yep.
when did you when did you watch him and think, dude, we got something here. This guy's gonna be good.
Well, in Minnesota, I mean, people were talking about him when he was younger, right? He was wrestling a bigger weight,
Really?
like in high school. In high school, like when he was younger in high school, like ninth grade, I think probably is when that first time I heard of Max McAnally. There's like a little pocket of ex Gopher wrestlers that I'm pretty good friends with that all live in Waconia. So like Manny Rivera, geez, I'm kind of on the spot right here, but Nate Matuzik,
No, that's good.
trying to think who else lives there. Like just a little pocket of these guys, and Jake Avery lives there now. Tyler Safartowicz, can't forget him. There's a few others, but they were talking. I remember, like, I think it was Tyler Safartowicz was talking about this guy, I think to egg him or something. So I remember watching him at the state tournament wrestle when I'm like, oh, this guy's it's pretty good, you know, like it's hard to tell, but he's wrestling like 160, you know what I mean? Like, or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And it's hard to tell because he's not wrestling, you know, like it's a state tournament, it's hit or miss sometimes, you know, like you don't know how guys are going to develop.
Yeah.
But then he only wrestles during the season pretty much. You know, he plays
Really.
football. He does, yeah. So he's like, it's like, geez, maybe he's got a lot of upside because he only wrestles during the season pretty much, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then sure enough, his sophomore year, he's a stud, and we were like onto him, you know. And junior year, you can recruit. So we were on him, and yeah, he just turned out to be this monster. He's a he's a freak athlete. You know, he I think he wanted to play football in college.
Really.
Yeah, but he wasn't getting the offers and stuff like he was hoping, you know, but and yeah, we just kind of developed a relationship with him and you know, and he ended up coming to the U of M and you know, like I think day one we knew he was going to be something special just because, you know, I mean, it's not like he wasn't known outside of Minnesota either a little bit. Like he was a
Mm-hmm.
U17 bronze medalist, you know. You know what's crazy? He's actually still a U20, so he's going to go to Vegas at the U20s now. I'm like, geez, this
Jeez.
guy. I wouldn't want to wrestle that guy in U20s,
Right?
but yeah. So
Dang. Man, that's too bad he couldn't play football. Man, that's just too bad, man, you
yeah,
know?
right. Meanwhile, we're in the office praying together. And please don't no one offer him football scholarship.
I mean, I bet he probably could have, obviously, with his size and if you know the athleticism you're talking about. I'm sure there were offers out there, um, to play football.
Yeah, I mean, I think he got some from like some smaller, you know, like
Hmm.
what are they? NCAA Division One AA. Like I think he got some of
Yeah,
those, you know, but I don't know if he got like the big ones like he thought, like, you know, but he was a heck of a
yeah,
running back.
really. God, I would
Hmm.
not go through the A gap, and here comes Max McAnally, and I'm like, oh no, no, thank you. And I can see why,
Right?
you didn't want to play football in high school. I didn't either, but that's exactly why.
Yeah. Yeah, he's awesome. And it's not like he's just amazing because he's a good athlete. He works his butt off too, and he just carries himself so well. Um, as a staff, we're just so proud of him. You know, he's like everything you could ask for to be represent your program. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it seems like.
So well spoken. You know, all that stuff. Very respectful.
Yeah.
Just awesome guy to be around.
Is there another guy or two on your team that's similar to that maybe isn't doesn't have the third place finish like he did, but still probably deserves some like man. But what this guy did for our team was just as important. Do you have a one or two, or I'm sure you have a list of guys like that, but
Yeah, I mean, obviously Gable. You know
who?
what he's done. What he's done for our program. You know
Yeah.
is you know he's like a once in a lifetime athlete. Now we're hoping we have another one, Max, but um, you know, just Vance Fonbar too. You know, it's like
Oh,
Vance is like the
true.
heart of
Yeah.
our team. You know, just a lot of spirit. Um, just the ultimate teammate guy, and you know his confidence. You know you can just tell how confident he is, and I think it rubs off on the guys and stuff. And you know, and the guys in our team have seen Gable, Max, Vance do well. It's like why not you?
Right.
Hopefully they're thinking, why not me? Like I can do it.
Hmm.
I'm doing the same stuff they're doing. Why can't I do it? You know?
Yeah. Did you have a little bit of discussion like that with Vance a couple of years ago when he was an All-American as like, they seed the whole tournament now as 20 something seed? Was that kind of the message to him when that was going on?
Yeah, I mean, our message to our guys is constantly the same as, it's just attitude and effort, right? Like just do the
Yeah.
best you can and people word that differently, right? Like I might say, we're going to fight to the death out there. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that, but it all means the same thing, right? Like whatever it takes to get through to different people, and he's honestly like, he's such a, he's almost like people would laugh at him probably, if they let, you've seen his interviews, people would
Mhm.
laugh at like his confidence, but that's real. It's genuine confidence and it's awesome.
Mhm.
That's what he has already. It's like obviously his experiences and stuff will shape that, but there's something about that guy that's special that he has already. And the same thing with Max. Max has that same confidence that's he will bet on himself 100 times out of 100. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter who it's against. And that's amazing, just the poise that those guys have when it comes to that type of thing. And, everyone's different, but, like I was a pretty confident wrestler, but I didn't even think about stuff like that. Like the
Mhm.
way that like, no, it's me, it's me. I'm like, I'm just gonna focus on doing the best I can. Just focus on the best I can. That's how I'd always verbalize stuff to myself. I
Mhm.
didn't even almost worry about winning or losing as much, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, those guys are amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Speaking of Gable, real quick, how did you push him throughout the year? Because he's, like you said, he's like a once in a lifetime human being.
Hmm.
How did you push him to get him the best out of him every day in practice when, some days it may have been hard to find ways to push him because he's
Yeah,
just at a different level. I mean,
right. Yeah. I mean, we do have some pretty good big guys in our room. We got Hayden Zilmer, um, Trent Hilger, um, Bennett Tabor, Coy Hopke was out all year with injury, but they're all pretty solid, big bodied dudes. So,
mhm,
it depends what you're working on, but there are days where he would get on the mat and just work on skills and stuff, and I mean, credit to Gable, he did a lot, probably more than anybody in our team, little extra stuff to work on his conditioning. Because, he's a freak, and that was probably gonna be a little bit of a factor, right? Like, okay, no one
right.
can beat him unless he gets tired. So I bet he did more bike sprints than everybody this year, where he would get on the bike after practice and our strength coach, Scott McWilliams, would put him through like a little series of bike sprints just to keep hitting it, hit it, one day hit it, 2 days later, hit it, just so he could keep building on that. He came back from football and he was pretty big. And, football is just a little different than wrestling. You never
Yeah.
get that glycolytic system burning as much and stuff. It's just explosion, stop, rest, explosion, stop. So he had to kind of get that back a little bit. And, you know, before he left for football, he was still wrestling a decent amount. But then when he went to football, that was it. He was
Right.
all in on football. So when he came back, I would say he did more than everyone else when it came to stuff like that for sure this year.
Well, yeah, and like you're saying, you kind of had to,
Yeah.
like people had
Yeah.
been working, when they come to the practice the first day, they've already been pretty much practicing.
Yeah.
Um, so it's kind of a formality, the first day of practice. He was probably behind the eight ball, so he had to catch up all this way just to even
Yeah.
get to wrestling shape, you know.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, did they do something? Did Gable or Max do something ever like when you were having a game or doing something like that you're just like, what the heck did he just do? Because they're just so athletic and freaks.
um, um, I mean, we see that with Gable all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's just like he's just like 3 seconds ahead of those guys. Like he like snaps their hands to the man. He just grabs their leg and picks it up, and they like, it's like the guy's so off balance that he just like they fall over. It's like, geez, he's just so he's light years ahead of a lot of those guys. Max, Max is, how do I explain Max? Max does such a good job of one, not wrestling in other people's positions. You know what I
Mm,
mean? Like
yeah.
he keeps it fairly simple, but he just finishes everything quick. Like he gets a leg, it's over. Like because he
Yeah.
just knocks him down. Like he's really good at finishing quick. He doesn't get in scrambles, and that's like a big. He might not be a scramble type guy as much, but he's so good at preventing the scramble when he finishes. You know what I mean? So it's such a great skill to have, you know, to not play someone else's game. And you know, Max has got some powerful shots where he can just run his feet really well too and get up and through the guy. He never gets stuck extended underneath the guy, you know, which, you know, is such a great skill in wrestling.
Yeah. You wrestled at a lot of different places, you know, all over the country. Um, did you have a couple in your mind that are some of your favorite places to compete?
Um, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of funny, but I always think that, you know, it doesn't matter where you're at, right?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
whatever happens in the circle, you know, so um, that's what matters. I mean, there's different environments that are fun to wrestle in, like big duels, like, you know, wrestling at Minnesota, like a great thing is you're always in big duel meets, Big Ten matches, you know.
Yeah.
So I got to see it wrestle in a lot of those venues, you know, like Carver Hawkeye is awesome. Our home matches are awesome. Um, you know, just places like that. Like the NCAA tournament's awesome, you know.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say, but I mean, it's stuff that you don't think about until it's over. Is stuff like
Yeah.
that, really. You know what I mean? But you're just worried about yourself and just your best effort out there. So yeah, just wrestling in like Carver Hawkeye is awesome. Yeah, I would say on the
Mhm.
road that's the best place to wrestle other than a home dual meet.
Yeah. What about the atmosphere at Rutgers and Jersey Mike's Arena? I mean,
Yeah,
what they have done there,
yeah,
that's
that
that's great.
right. That's so true. They do a great job. We never got to wrestle them in a duel when I was in college.
Yeah.
We did wrestle out there at national duels one year. My senior year, we wrestled there at national duels, and you know, it wasn't quite the same because I can't remember, but I don't know if Rutgers was even in it. They were just hosting that regional,
Oh,
like
gotcha.
national
Okay.
duels regional. So
Right.
I don't know if I don't know so I don't know if there's a lot of Rutgers fans there per
Hmm.
se, but um yeah, it was a cool atmosphere then too.
Yeah. Last thing I wanted to ask you about here. Um, there's this, speaking of YouTube from earlier, you know, we have access to YouTube. Um, and somebody made a video of your highlights, your wrestling highlights.
Yeah.
Do you know who made that?
Cole Schrupp. So Cole
Okay.
Schrupp, he was there's this club that I'd go up and wrestle like the Thorns at, and it was called the High Flyers. And he was a high flyer. He was from Watertown Mayor, but he was really good friends with Chaz Betts, who was a St. Michael guy, who's now in the WWE. Chad Gable is his name. But we were
Oh,
like kind of
okay.
all friends. And I remember he made a highlight video for Mike Thorne's graduation party. I'm like, that's so cool. So then I'm like, hey, will you make me a highlight video for my graduation party? And I gave him a bunch of tapes. I gave him like a big box of tapes, and he put
Hmm.
that thing together. But he's a great dude. He actually was our videographer at the end of my college career. So all those videos that came out of us working out and
Hmm.
like recaps of the duels and tournaments and stuff, and they got like music in the background and like workout videos. He made all of those. So he's kind of been around a long time. He's a great dude. He actually was the videographer for my wedding a couple summers ago.
Wow.
Yeah. So he knows his stuff and he's a great dude. Yep.
Yeah. Do you like flex that a little bit? Like, yeah, 19,000 views, baby. Like, what do you got,
There's a lot more than that when it came out. That video got taken down. There was like over a hundred. I think there was a couple 100,000 views.
Wow.
Yeah, but yeah, how many people I've had mention something like that to me?
Why
That's
did
the
it get,
only reason people know who I am, I think.
yeah, why did it get taken down? Was it copyright or something,
Uh
music?
Copyright like when YouTube was new, like the music like it didn't, the music was owned by some whoever made it and they took it down. and then someone reposted it like a long time later. But
Gotcha.
yeah, I
Do
think actually,
these
is it? It might be under Cole Schrupp now. I don't know, but some other random guy posted it, and then that one got taken down too, I think, and then now Cole's got it again. So I think this
Jeez.
is like the third. I think this is like the third time it's been posted.